Alright, Eric again. Another thing I wanted to talk about was the food that we eat. And I sell myself being from Indian descent, I'm actually exposed to a lot of sweets and carbohydrates and just bread and butter and just it's appalling actually, and I don't really like it. But I think we forget that while these traditional foods are created, were like while these are traditional foods and like they're staple part of our cultures. We forget that and roti especially like as part of my culture, we eat a lot of roti. I think we tend to forget that I'm my parents are Jat and I'm Jat, so and that actually means that we were farmers. So back in the day, it made sense for us to eat lots and lots of roti and lots of high carb stuff. And plus, we also have to take into account that back then, the flour and the food and the butter and the sugars in our food weren't that processed. It wasn't readily available. So even the sweets that we ate, like that are part of Indians are known for their very sweet sweets actually. So and the thing behind that is back in the day we didn't have this amazing like this intense amount of sugar available to us. So even the sweets were not that sweet. So that's another thing to take into account. Plus, they were made on such a rare occasion. Now we have them readily available and we have them all the time, and I think that's stupid. And especially with the roti thing as well. So it makes sense to eat a very big meal with, full of carbs and lots of fat and etc. when you're working all day. When you're working 18, 16, 18 hours on a farm all day to provide for yourself and for your family and to so that you can eat the food and harvest it. I mean, it makes sense to eat very high calorie, very high carb food, and you can get away with it. But it just does not make sense to me. What the fuck? Sorry. It doesn't make sense to me in our sedentary lifestyle that we eat all this crap. Even westernized food like potatoes and bread and all this stuff. It's stupid. I mean, we live these sedentary lifestyles and then we are encouraged to load up on carbs and fat and really sugar rich stuff like chips. Who the hell decided that we should be eating chips? I mean, I guess it makes sense to have a snack when you're working in intense hard labor in an environment where you have to exert yourself physically. Yes, eat whatever the hell you need to eat to sustain that energy and lifestyle. I mean, that makes sense. It's like it doesn't make sense. The amount of the crap that we eat is so stupid, and just we everything else we evolve, but we won't evolve ourselves. I think that's stupid. I mean, it makes sense to me. Uh, I just don't get why we need to have so much bread and so much sweets and so much carbs. Even fats are actually like fats themselves to me they're not bad, but when you pair them with lots of carbs, like take for instance a candy bar, yeah, it's pretty high in fat, but the fat isn't what gets you. It's when you mix that fat with high amounts of sugar and carbs that it gets you, and that's just asinine. Like, why the hell are we even eating this kind of stuff? I don't understand why. Why are we eating? Well, this is actually more directed at Indians right now. Why the fuck are we eating roti for 3 courses throughout the day? Why? I mean, don't get me wrong. Sog is the greatest thing ever created. I mean, that makes sense. Sog is good. But again, it's also a very high energy food. I mean, I love to eat that shit after a heavy gym session or a heavy workout. Nothing's more satisfying than eating a couple roti with a big bowl full of sog and a big spoon of butter in it. I mean, it's just very satisfying and satiating and filling, and it's good for you. But it depends on the context. That said, I mean, it makes no sense for anybody leading a sedentary lifestyle to eat 3 or 4 roti with a little bit of dal and like some I don't know. It's just it doesn't make sense. It's just soup and bread. Why? Like, who decided that that was healthy and why? How? How did they decide that? It doesn't make sense to me. Anyways, that's my little sugar rant, and partially because we have people coming over, and when there's people over, you have to have samosa. You know, these the samosa are actually these little pockets made of flour, and in the flour there's, lo and behold, there is potatoes. I mean, they're very good. I mean, don't get me wrong, samosas are delicious, but again, it's just, why do we need to eat this kind of food when we're not working? I mean, I understand back in the day when we lived in India and our ancestors worked long hard days on the farm, and then they visited each other who also worked long hard days on the farm. You treated your guests. I mean, that makes sense. You treat your guests, but it just, to me, it doesn't make sense to treat your guests with the same type of food when they're not living the same lifestyle. I mean, I know it's important to preserve cultures and whatnot and traditions, but I think those cultures and traditions need to evolve to match our lifestyle, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm all for keeping cultures and like keeping knowledge and keeping old ways. I love the old ways. The old ways are great, especially the old ways when it comes to like thinking, like super old ways, like spirituality and like performing yoga, and like that's partially the thing that gets me. Like another side branch is I don't get me wrong, I'm not a Muslim. I don't really know anything, but by speculating, I think that the reason that they pray 5 times a day and they do that elaborate motion is to ingrain the praying into their central nervous system. Because, as we know, when we think about something and then do an action associated with that, it just gets that much more ingrained into our minds and into our being, for instance. And plus, it's a method of physical training. It keeps you active. And so that makes sense. That's another side rant. But yeah, so if we're going to be eating these types of foods, we should be engaging in the type of physical activity that require the caloric intake. And just, yeah, rant over. Good day to you.